On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Oliver Bandte. He is the VP of Data and Analytics at Wellframe. We're going to be talking about data org structures. And by that, I mean, you can obviously have different types of models within your organization, whether you're a startup or a larger company. And how do you guys go back, refactor and account for ML and data ops? I mean, there's so much now going into these data teams that are becoming so complex. And I am excited, Oliver, to have you on to talk about this.
Well, very excited to be here, man.
Awesome, man. All right, let's start off at the top with two things. One, what does Wellframe do? And what are the responsibilities that you have as the VP of Data and Analytics?
Yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm very excited to talk to your audience today. So, Wellframe is a care management or digital care management company at its core. So what that means is we're helping our customers, which are large health plans and medium-sized health plans throughout the country, administer something called care management, which is a relatively new decade or so old practice of helping the members follow up on care suggestions from their providers or general filling what called care gaps, like have you done your colonoscopy when you're over 50, zoster vaccines, things of that nature. And what we typically see today is that health plans have a dedicated staff that actually follow up on that and call the members to say, it's like, hey, we see that you haven't really taken this vaccine or something along those lines, or gone see your doctor on this particular issue. We would like you to do that in order to prevent further complications. There are situations where people have been discharged from the hospital, and the health plan would like to follow up and make sure that you have the care that you need at home, et cetera. So it's an advanced care model, if you want. And we provide a digital environment for that. So it's an app that the member actually has in their hand to schedule medication reminders, schedule appointments, have readings, so articles about their particular condition or disease, that they're being educated and can therefore better take care of themselves. There's a plug-in to biometrics as well, heartbeat, diabetes, things of that, blood sugar level testing equipment, things of that nature. So that all goes in to the app. And then we have a dashboard on the health plan side that helps these care managers now track multiple members and allow a portfolio of members to be monitored and reach out to and interact with and help with. So what I do in all of that is I am responsible for all things data, so to speak. So I run a data engineering team, I run a data science team, and I run an analytics engineering team, as well as a BI, business intelligence team that is mostly responsible for our business metric reporting, has some analysts in it, et cetera. So I'll pause there for a second, since I know you talked a little bit about the pulling apart. Maybe we can go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, maybe before we start talking about, you got 4 different teams you manage. So obviously you've gone through this process of refactoring the team. And maybe we can talk about some of the drivers that go into that. But, maybe go back a step before. Obviously you have 4 different teams now. Was that always the case? When how far back, if you go, was the team one group, or what did it look like when you first started with the organization?
So I've been relatively new to this particular organization here, so about 7 months. When I came to Wellframe, the focus had been a data science team ultimately, and then they had developed a capability that was sort of more of an analytics engineering team, meaning that there was the data modeling was and Looker dashboards is that's our platform that we use for visualization and reporting. That was done by a team that's was still part of it, what's called the data science team, but it effectively was somewhat of a different capability. When I came, I more formally, I guess, separated those teams and called out the activity of the analytics engineers as something specific and dedicated. They're really responsible for the trustworthiness of the data. They're the ones building the data models, from an ingestion point, which is our data lake, if you want, building pipelines that are data models effectively into a warehouse that allows us to query that data and then build reports off of that. And this data has to be trustworthy. So those analytics engineers have to know where the data comes from and are therefore concerned with both the movement of that data, but more so with the content of it. How do you how to aggregate it, and whether the numbers that we're getting out of the reports actually make any sense. So somebody needs to take responsibility for that. So that's the analytics engineering team. I wanted to call that out and therefore made them specifically a separate team under me than the data scientist team.
Okay, that makes sense. So you broke that out, obviously specific drivers. When you're kind of, and I know you've only been there 7 months, and I know you've worked, different type of companies in the past. When you kind of look at the different ways you've experienced different teams being set up, what has been your experience with the different types of, structures of the data team?
Yeah, so I often see, particularly now as we're looking at to grow the team and looking at candidates, there's often a confusion with data engineering and analytics engineering. In my case here, what I decided on was to take a group of pipeline engineers that were located under our engineering team and make them part of a dedicated data engineering team that's dedicated to the data and analytics hub, if you want. So take them out of engineering and make them part of the separate organization called Data and Analytics. The benefit to me of that is that I have a dedicated data ops team that if I need an upscaling of a virtual environment, EC2 environment, or what we're in the Google side, but nonetheless, I don't have to actually work with a DevOps team that has a much larger remit, right? If we're thinking about a data science remit, it is the highly iterative nature of their work that makes it working as critical to their success. To wait for a couple of weeks or so until a DevOps team gets around to upscaling an EC2 service, just not feasible to make that work. So therefore, a dedicated data engineering, data ops team, so to speak, was critical for me to have that under me. So that data engineering team, I then hired a dedicated data engineering manager for it and took those pipeline engineers underneath that individual. The how I separate this out for me is, and this is the confusion a little bit, because data engineering typically for a lot of people still includes that content expertise that I described before for the analytics engineers. I describe the data engineering responsibility more as the movement and storage of bits and bytes. They're truly in their nature engineers and are more concerned with the programming exercise and want to make sure that it is most efficient. The pipelines are running as efficient as possible. You have your the engineering component, if you want, to the movement of the data is their expertise. They're less concerned with what the data actually really means. That's the analytics engineer's job now in turn. So I that had, in my experience, I had done this in a role before, worked well for us as a, let's say, medium-sized team or company, rather, where we have smallish teams, but with separate responsibilities. It's also a little bit of a recruiting tool for me, where I can focus on individuals that are more software programmers, but like to do that with data. That would be a data engineer for me, versus people that want to actually understand a little bit more about how the data comes about, where it's generated, how it's curated, how it's being used to understand and see the impact of it on the business side. Those would be the analytics engineers for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because obviously as you have more defined teams, the hiring could either be easier or harder. But in this case, it seems that, between the data engineering teams and, let's say, the analytics engineering teams, it is a fine line that's potentially allowing you to just see where you direct talent based on their ideal fit, I guess.
Yeah, it sometimes actually helps a little in the sense that I can direct them to either team. We're looking to grow both teams, so therefore there's always an opportunity to say, it's like, well, what really is your core interest? Where would you like to take your career? Do you want to become more technical, be more programming, or do you actually have an interest in becoming a little bit more focused on the particular industry that you sit in, become more of a data expert in that industry? So it allows in the interview process already puts the candidate in charge of their future career and where they want to take that, and allow them to make that as a decision. That has, I think, resonated with candidates, and then allows me to place them in one team versus the other.
I guess you touched on the ops side, and obviously the data engineers can help with that. When it comes to some of the other stuff of actual infrastruccture support for the data team, is that being pulled into your domain and purview as well, or is that staying with the team that's currently with, or whoever manages that?
Yeah, in all frankness, that's a bit in transition, so to speak. The plan is to pull that as part of into the data engineering team, make it a true data ops team. At this point, that still sits with DevOps, but in the engineering team itself. But I have in the past actually have owned that in a prior role with a different firm. My data engineering team there was a true data ops team, and we owned our environment outright. We had the contract with a cloud provider. We had the contracts with all the tool providers, and so we here as a data team, we were sort of halfway there. We already have the contracts with the visualization providers, and we have contracts with some pipeline providers that we manage that are not part of DevOps responsibility at this point.
Interesting. I guess as that process goes through, that's going to be 5 teams potentially. You're adding some of those software components from another team, some of the infrastructure components of the other team. I'm assuming that as good as you are, as wide as you are, you can only be so deep as you start getting wider here. You have to have some excellent managers to be supporting, these various aspects of the team.
Yeah. I was very fortunate to have a terrific analytics engineering manager already when I arrived here, who had sort of filled in a little bit as the head of that data and analytics team. So I was able to backfill that role when I arrived, and give her back the responsibility for the implementation and running of an analytics engineering team, and then was fortunate to find a couple of months ago a terrific data engineering manager. I'm currently I have a background on the data science side, so it's my original area that I come from. So I currently still manage that data science team. It's the smallest out of the 3 right now. Anyway, we're 4. That allows me to still do that and dive a little bit deeper there into the technical aspects, particular where focus for data science is on the delivery of the insights to the rest of the organization. So our customer services organization, in their customer meetings, I often join in those meetings to then present the insights that we generated from our analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine. I guess that's where it kind of helps you. You have your own area of specialization as well, so you get to, take your deep dive when you want.
That's why I focus there too. But yeah, the data engineering side is, from my personal background, the weakest. And I do believe it is important to know your own weaknesses too, and where you're the strongest, and then backfill yourself in a way as a manager with the expertise that you don't have as deeply. And I suppose I have just enough to be able to identify a good candidate and then then build the personal trust relationship with that individual to say, I will give you the reins to build a capable organization that does what I set out as a strategy for that team to do. So that's the way I approach that, to give strategic guidance and say, I want this team to do X, Y, and Z. And finding a candidate that agrees with that, is willing to say, yep, I will do that. And then give that individual now the freedom to achieve those goals, in which way and tactical way that individual is now proposing. It has to make sense to me, but that's about it. The implementation is then up to the individual.
Absolutely. I was actually I was kind of curious about that. You addressed it, which is perfect. And then I was going to ask you. So you obviously came in and the team's evolving. You know, you're setting it up based on, I guess, the needs you see for the team, for the company to optimally execute. When do you reevaluate the structure you've set up? Is there periodic times where you're reevaluating it? Is it just dynamic? Is it reactive? Because obviously you can only predict so much of what you need in the future.
So I suppose, I don't know, in my own head, I guess I do that constantly. I never stop thinking about it, that I make the right choices, right? You know, but you can't sort of change your strategy on a daily basis either. That just introduces too much, chaos in your own organization. So I in my head allow myself to rethink, and then literally, like almost in the scientific or data scientific approach, you collect the evidence, right? You collect data, and say, it's like, all right, am I able to do I see the results that I was hoping for? And then maybe, investigate a little bit, particularly if you believe in the people that you hired, to see, can I now correct in the direction, if it's not going in the direction where I thought it would go? Are there additional resources I can give that individual? Is there something that I can potentially do as a more senior manager to either help that more junior manager develop, or are there organizational changes that I can make within the broader organization? Is maybe to play out a scenario, maybe we're not successful. I am not successful in bringing in the responsibility for our analytics environment. Maybe that is something that for us as an organization continues to make sense to stay with engineering, because maybe we're too small and therefore it's not worthwhile to split out contracts and split out relationships with vendors and things of that nature, because there is obviously an engineering team will have a need for compute environments as well. Could very well be. And then I have to be open and keep myself open to the change in that strategy and say, all right, well, this doesn't pan out. Maybe we don't take this on as a responsibility, and we have a million other things to do as data engineers anyway. So we'll just refocus a little bit. That's evolving. That is one of those aspects that can easily evolve over time, I would argue. I mean, not everything that you had planned in your head will always work out exactly the same way that you had planned it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about that. So, other teams within the company might have maybe similar capabilities, maybe it's from an infrastructure standpoint, maybe other aspects, but having a team that's kind of more defined along the way that you have, how do you, I guess, collaborate with those other leaders to make sure, there's not redundancy, or if there is, you guys resolve that or potentially see some of those, areas?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually have a pretty decent example here as well. So it's on the other side, if you want, with my business intelligence team. So it at this point I function there as the manager as well, because it's really just constitutes or exists of two people. One is a Salesforce administrator, is sort of the other side where we keep our business metrics, and the other one is an analyst. So we never had an analyst before within the organization. I felt strongly this was something that we actually should have, so we can stop having VPs, et cetera, type into Excel numbers to build reports and things of that nature. That's an analyst is kind of perfect for that role. It's kind of what they tend to do and tend to do well. and it, I brought this as a central function, right? I'm a hub function, if you want, and this BI team is a hub function. This analyst serves all our business teams: sales, marketing, customer service, operations. But some of these teams realized that they actually had a significant need for that as well. Maybe there's a bit of a strategic change in what some of their customer facing individuals, project managers, or the like are what their responsibilities are. So they started to think through an approach of hiring their own analysts, which I actually welcome. It's not about turf building or kind of fiefdoms or whatnot. It's to me, it's always about a capability build. It has to be a capability build for the organization, for Wellframe as a whole, not just for individual teams. That's why I hired the analysts in the first place, is supporting Wellframe as a broader company in all the different teams. So of course, I would be, and they approach me and say, would you help hire the individual? We're looking for somebody that's maybe a little bit more technical. And therefore, we don't know how to evaluate the technical strength of a candidate. Can you help? It's like, yes, of course, I will do that, because it benefits the entire organization. And it will stand next to and in parallel to my analyst that reports to my BI team and to me. But that is really just a nature of the reporting structure right now. It doesn't have to and will not forever be the nature of the work. There will be more and more work that comes, and I've seen this over the last couple of months, towards that one analyst, and I will need multiple people anyway, so we might as well carve out an additional role, if you want, for that for the customer service organization. I even offered up a ring fence model, which I have seen work well as well in prior organizations that I was a part of, where you have a reporting structure that goes to the analytics manager, to me in this case, but that individual will only work on projects or requests from the customer service organization. That is a very viable model as well. You provide a cohort, a sort of family of analysts and technical individuals for that candidate, but you have the business dedication to one particular function within the organization. I've seen that work quite well.
Interesting. I mean, it sounds like, if we revisit the topic in a year and a half's time, you'll have probably a whole different landscape, either a super mature team or you'll have probably refactor the team again based on needs. Yeah, it could be anything. It should be exciting. Yeah. Hopefully, we can have you back in some time to re-examine how the team and some of the decisions. I think that'd be awesome. I was going to ask you, I like to ask guests now if there's a topic or question they'd like a future guest to address.
Yeah, so I am, as the former data scientist, if you want, I one of the things that we're still going to work on, and that will be on our future agenda, is an element of MLOps. We're a mid-sized firm, so how do you balance your capability build of insights versus MLOps, rather than having or multiple teams, so to speak, which we can't afford? Can you build this into one individual, two individuals? How do you structure a data science team that is both centered around insights and then MLOps? So that as a particular for mid-sized firms, that would be of interest to me, obviously.
Awesome. That sounds actually like a good one. Could be helpful for multiple people to hear about. Also, if somebody does want to reach out to you about the podcast, or maybe they want to reach out to you and talk to you about your question particularly, is there a good way of getting a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, or at least monitor that regularly. So if somebody wants to reach out via LinkedIn, maybe reference the podcast. Yes, there's lots of recruiters as well that are often reaching out. I will ignore you, but everybody else that's on asking on content, more than happy to have a follow-up conversation.
Awesome. Oliver, thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing. Really interesting topic. I know a lot of data teams are, they're tackling this complexity in different ways. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and how you've gone about it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different guests, different topic. So two things. One, if you can speak to the question about balancing those ML ops capabilities into your team and how that structure looks and how it probably evolves over time. Love to have you on because I think it's a topic a lot of people would like to hear about. Also, if it's something that you want to drop Oliver a note directly, feel free to do that. Otherwise, if you do find the podcast useful, please share it. That's how the podcast has grown, and we like to see that. That's it for today. I'll be back again. Thank you and goodbye.